I'd like to call the Tuesday, August 19, 2014 Papillion City Council meeting to order. Mrs. Butler, would you please take the roll?
Florence. Here. Mumgard. Here. Gaines. Here. Glover. Here. Jaworski. Here. Klug. Stubbe. Ingberg.
Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And do we have an affidavit of publication on file?
That is correct.
And a current copy of the Opens Meeting Act is posted in the back of the council chambers. We've got a presentation tonight. Honored to have Kevin Jarls with us. Kevin, podium's yours. I think everybody knows you, but do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure.
Both your role with EDC and your day job as well.
Okay, sure. Well, thank you for having me, Mayor, City Council, and staff. My name's Kevin Jarls, and I am with Black Hills Energy. I'm the operations manager for the Omaha Metro region in Lincoln, and I'm also on the board for the Sarpy County Economic Development. And tonight, I am here to give you just a brief summary of the Sarpy County Economic Development second quarter report. I also, you have copies in front of you that just basically gives you some numbers on the progress in Sarpy County. And what I'm going to do is just talk about some of the sales, building permits, some of the big projects that are going on right now, and just basically a brief summary of the EDC and the county. You'll also be able to see the various other communities in Sarpy County, and you'll be able to see their progress as well. So with that, I'll get started. Thank you. First off, what you see here is basically just the net taxable sales, and you can see from January to May 2004 is up $64 million versus January of 2013. So substantial growth, and you can see in the individual cities within the county that those numbers. Next is just the retail services businesses that have started up in Sarpy counties this year thus far, and you can see there's just various through in the various cities. Building permits, second quarter was a record in 2013 of $2 million, and in 2014 second quarter we're actually up $77 million for building permit valuations. So a nice increase. Major valuation projects. These are just some of the big projects that are going on throughout the county. There's basically 3 projects that are from $3 million to $3.5 million, and 4 projects that are at $1 million to $1.6. And you can just see on the slide just the various businesses who are starting and the square footages as well with the valuations. I know I'm going through this fairly quickly, but the information you have in front of you will also explain it. Some of the top 8 permitted projects in Sarpy County. As a lot of you know, the Travelers is one of them. Sargent Pet Products. And you can see there the square footages at 350,000 square feet. Fairfield Inn here in Papillion at 54,000 square feet. You see the La Vista Junior High expansion, Methodist Health Systems, Grapple North America, and Sarpy County Ag Society Fairgrounds. So you can see those are some of the top 8 projects that are going right now in 2014. Single family housing permits. This is one where actually, believe it or not, we've gone down in 2014 this time from last year. You can see in the second quarter in 2013 we were at 296, and thus far at 222. So I think, you know, we see a lot of building going on, but there are a lot of subdivisions and those types of things going in to build that lot inventory. And this is some housing subdivisions that are going in. A Little Prairie on 192nd Cornish Road, there's 13 lots there. In Tiburon Ridge, 63 lots there. You'll also see that there's lots, and if you know where Warner Ballpark is, naturally there's lots, and there's a North Shore there. And those lots were auctioned off, and they were actually auctioned off within 90 seconds when the auction opened. So you can see there was some interest out there. This is the labor statistics. And you can see here where Sarpy County labor rates are, statistic rates are, and you can see that the U.S. employment rate is at 7.4, and then within Sarpy County, we're anywhere from the 4.1 to 4.6, so doing well. As Toby Churchill, the director of the Sarpy County EDC, would tell you, it's been kind of a roller coaster ride this year. You can see at the bottom of the year to date in 2014 versus last year, we're a little down on inquiries. However, further on in the slides, you will see that there's been a lot of inquiries, but just not a lot of action, but a lot of stuff that the EDC group has had to do. Some data centers that they're looking at, there's two of them. One is a 50,000 square foot plug and play call center, and another one that is looking in the area is another 50,000 square foot relocation of a service data center. Sarpy County has been kind of a magnet for data centers. You know, we have Cabela's and Century, and then we have the two new ones that have come on board. So today we heard some information at the summit that they had this morning, and they said that there's a lot of inquiries on data centers. They said once one comes, others like to follow. There's some other sites or prospects, 100,000 square foot. The building, they need rail served, and that's one of the things in Sarpy County that you'll see that we're lacking is rail served sites. Another 100,000 square foot inquiry on a warehouse space, and then there's 15 to 25,000 square foot light manufacturing company who is looking in this area. Grapple North is just a project summary. Grapple North, you know, they purchased 7.5 acres, 45,000 square foot in the Hill Industrial Park. They'll create 14 new jobs, and it's a $5.6 million investment. Another one is Sergeant's Pet Care Products, purchased 49 acres in Sarpy County Industrial Park, projected 50 new employees, and that's a $20 million investment. And here's where we talked about the inquiries, how they've kind of come up and down, and you can see that a 12-year average, there's about 66 inquiries, and you can see in 2013 there were 13, and so we're a little bit behind. But you'll also see here the number of inquiries from January 24 to June 2014, 158 versus last year at 85. So you can see that EDC group's been busy with a lot of inquiries, but then you also can see from those inquiries there's not been a lot of visits. We're down a little bit on the visits. Just some other areas where we're looking, we're starting a due diligence on Highway 50 in Capehart, looking at 145 acres site. We're continuing to negotiate with controls on options on that Highway 50 corridor site. You can see here there's various meetings going on with landowners. There's some drafts going on. You can see here there's a meeting with the Springfield officials on the short term for the wastewater treatment system, and then on the long term you can see they're going out for an RFP for long-term wastewater treatment. And another site in Bellevue, they're beginning to focus on the north portion of the site, but this is kind of down there on the I'll call it the south side of Bellevue, and in between that La Platte area. there's some issues with the river there, and that's why you can see here that they're looking at the Army Corps of Engineers to look at working on that levee there that they've had some problems with. And you can see where Bellevue officials are trying to establish some new contracts for both the north and the south landowners on that site. So there's a lot of work going on there at that site. That is a brief summary. I didn't want to take up a lot of your time, but that concludes my summary to you.
Appreciate it. Anybody have any questions? Thanks for your partnership both on the EDC and at Black Hills. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Hoynes, Administrator's report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the council, I'll begin my report this evening by taking the council back to last March. You approved an interlocal agreement along with 3 other cities, Hastings, Holdridge, and La Vista. The context of that interlocal agreement was to hire a broker to screen, qualify vendors, and solicit bids for our property, casualty, and workers' comp insurance that's currently rested with LARM. Participating in conference call this afternoon with Ms. Myers and the other cities. The preliminary numbers are in there, finalizing those, but initial indications are there's going to be a substantial savings as a part of that bid process to the city of Papillion. We'll be finalizing those, and the vendor will be present, or the broker will be present at the September 2nd council meeting to present those findings and ask you for a decision on that. So if you have any questions, concerns, comments about that process between now and then, please feel free to give either Chris or myself a call, and we'll do our best to answer those questions. But we anticipate that to be before you at the next council meeting. Last week we did take bids on some work at Veterans Park. A couple of you have asked, didn't we put money in last year's budget? The answer is yes. The first thing we need to do is there's a transmission water line that goes through there that conflicts with our proposed concept. So that's what we took a bid on. It came in at around $90,000. We'll be asking you for approval of that also at the September 2nd meeting, and we'll start that. That was a timing issue for us, use of the park systems and such. So we'll get that water line relocated yet this year. There's additional funding for that park, I believe somewhere around $100,000 in the proposed budget to continue next year. But if we do that, the next phase would be to start the flat work within the next year. When I say flat work, a redesign of the sidewalk system consistent with our plan. And I know that Mayor Black and several others have been out and talked to folks about partnering to enhance that and really keep that project on the forefront. We have continued good news. It's interesting with Mr. Jarro's presentation there that Papillion numbers are up and often leading Sarpy County across the board. Nancy just provided us with the last month's sales tax revenues. Year to date over last year, we're up 5.37%, which is a very good thing. To give you a little bit of context there, the sales tax is our primary revenue generator. That represents about 33% of the revenue we use to run the city as compared to 20% for property taxes. So that's giving us, I think, the balance that we've been trying to strike, going from a small community where commerce went out of town to, being self-sufficient as a community. And so that's happened over the last 10 to 15 years. I think I credit the policy decisions of the mayor and council and the hard work of the staff. Total, we're at $6.8 million collected in sales tax this year, and again, that's up 5.37% over last year. Conclude my report, Mr. Mayor, by reminding the council and giving them a special invitation to the Sip and Walk 2, which will be this coming Thursday night, hosted by the Downtown Business Association. I think advance tickets are $15 and at the door $20, and they're actually expanding it from their first event, which had 200 plus participants in it. They're going to have shuttle stops between that go from Weathered and Warren to the Papillion Fun Park, and so if you're not doing anything Thursday evening, I think it'd be a great idea for you to come out and look at what some of those folks are doing out there. They're doing some really good things. So that concludes my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Councilman Jaworski. Second by Councilwoman Klug. Do we have any proponents? Do we have any opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Next is item D1, ordinance 1700. An ordinance to approve the change of zone of certain real property within the zoning jurisdiction of the city of Papillion, Sarpy County, Nebraska, legally described as a platting of tax lots 6 and 12B in the northeast quarter of section 34, township 14 north, range 12R, generally located at 500 Valley Road from single-family residential low-density R1 and agricultural AG to multifamily residential R4, to amend the official zoning map of the city of Papillion by changing the zoning district boundaries of the zoning map in accordance with section 20532 of the Papillion Municipal Code and to provide for an effective date. Is there a council member that will introduce? Introduced by Councilman Glover. Thank you. D2, ordinance 1701. Bruce, you always give me the long ones. An ordinance authorizing the issuance of water revenue bonds, Series 2014 of the City of Papillion, Nebraska, in the aggregate principal amount of not to exceed $2,600,000 for the purpose of providing for financing of the costs and enlarging, expanding, and improving the city's waterworks plant and system, directing the application of the proceeds of said bonds, prescribing the form, terms, and details of said bonds, pledging and hypothecating the revenues and earnings of the waterworks plant and water system of said city for the payment of said bonds and interest thereon on an equal and ratable basis with the city's outstanding water revenue bond Series 2011, water revenue refunding bond Series 2011B, and water revenue bond Series 2013, providing for the collection, segregation, and application of the revenues of said waterworks plant and water system, entering into a contract on behalf of the city with the bondholders of said bonds, approving an undertaking with respect to continuing disclosure, and providing for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form. Is there a council member that will introduce?
I'll introduce.
Introduced by Councilman Ingberg.
And, Mayor, I would like to also make, so we get this completed before the end of the city's fiscal year, make a motion to waive the second, third readings.
And that is typical on our bond issues, so we can take advantage of the rates as well. This does require a supermajority. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Gaines. Do we have proponents? Do we have any opponents? Any council discussion? Please vote on the motion to waive second and third. And again, this takes a supermajority.
7 yeas, 0 nays.
Do we have a motion to approve ordinance 1701? Motion by Councilman Ingberg. Second by Councilman Florence. Proponents? And Bruce is here if anybody has any questions. Do we have any opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
Seven yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Thank you, Bruce. E1, Ordinance 1696, an ordinance to amend the budget statement to be termed the annual appropriation bill, which is adopted on January 7, 2014 by Ordinance 1677, to appropriate sums for necessary expenses and liabilities and to provide for an effective date. This is a budget amendment for the 2013-2014 current year. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Do we have any proponents? Do we have any opponents? Close the public hearing. Item E2, Ordinance 1697, an ordinance to adopt the budget statement to be termed the annual appropriation bill to appropriate sums for necessary expenses and liabilities and to provide for an effective date. This is the budget for fiscal year 2014-2015. It is a public hearing. Do we have proponents? Do we have any opponents? Close the public hearing. Item E3, Ordinance 1698, an ordinance to amend in its entirety Chapter 146 of the Papillion Municipal Code having to do with door-to-door sales, mobile vendors, and facility use and event permits, general provisions, definitions, door-to-door sales, mobile vendors, facility use and event permits, enforcement, violations, penalties, and to provide for an effective date. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Do we have proponents? Do we have any opponents? Close the public hearing. Item F1, Resolution R140124. This is a public hearing and a vote. A resolution to approve a Class C liquor license for Sam's West, Inc., doing business as Sam's Club number 6181, 9851 South 71st Plaza, Papillion, Nebraska 68133, and a manager application for Dustin, and I'm going to mess up your last name. Thank you. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Do we have proponents? And the applicant is here. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, guys. My name is Dustin Eady. I'm actually an operations manager at Sam's Club. Came from the North Lincoln Sam's Club and been with the company for 5.5 years. To here for Papillion to introduce that club here in about 1 month exactly. Grand opening on September 25th. So we're here today to look at the liquor license approval by you guys. Other than that, it's nice to meet you guys. I'll stick around and talk to one of you guys on a one-on-one basis afterwards. So
Appreciate it.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
You got it.
Do we have any other proponents? Any opponents? Close the public hearing. Do we have a motion to approve Resolution R14-0124? Motion by Councilman Jaworski, second by Councilman Ingberg. Council discussion, Mr. Mumgard.
Could you come forward once more? I'd noticed you're applying for a Class C license.
Okay.
That's the license that's typically held by a bar because it allows both on-premises and off-premises sale.
Okay.
I looked through your application looking for where your bar was going to be, but I find you're not going to have a bar.
No bar, sir. Nope. Nope. We actually get the paperwork from our home office. There's actually people that are in charge of getting all their documentation together. They ask for, give it to us, and we fill it out as they tell us to do so. And they're able to get that to Eliza and go forward with that. So if there's a mistake on that portion of it, I'll follow up to make sure it's correct.
Well, I don't
So-
think it is. I just want to confirm if my understanding is correct. It's written on the application that you're going to be restricted to sampling. So your on-premises consumption won't be the guys sitting around the bar or the tables drinking. It'll just simply be the sampling that's allowed by wholesalers, correct?
Exactly.
Oh, okay, thank you. That's too bad. It might be a good time to have a bar.
It's a whole other business opportunity, yes. Yep. Very good.
Any other council discussion? Please vote.
Seven yeas, zero nays.
Motion passes. Welcome to the community. Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Item F2, Resolution R14-0127, a public hearing and a vote. A resolution to approve a special use permit to allow a bed and breakfast as a permitted use for the property legally described as Lot 128 Terra Hills, generally located at 1207 Cork Drive. The applicant is Carol Fairfax. Fairfax Bed and Breakfast. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Do we have proponents? Do we have any opponents? Well, and if you'd state your name for the record.
Yes, I am Carol Fairfax, requesting the special permit use for a bed and breakfast.
Thank you. Any opponents? You might want to stay there. I'll close the public hearing. Do we have a motion to approve Resolution R14-0127? Motion by Councilman Jaworski, second by Councilwoman Klug. Council discussion, Mr. Mumgard.
Okay, you're going to have to tell us more about this. As I understand your application, you want a bed and breakfast in the typical house in Papillion, and you're with Airbnb.
Should I turn this on?
You have pictures?
Thank you,
I just
Tony.
have
Well, we need
Picture
to
of my
look at
house.
pictures.
you need pictures, okay. There we go. Okay, let's see if it'll show it. There it is. This is a picture of my home at 1207 Court Drive.
Okay. What do you have there? You say following are in support. What is that?
I took this around to several neighbors to get support or find out if anyone had concerns. And I just simply was writing that I am using my private home. I am not going to put signage in my yard. And I hope to be in compliance with the permit for the city of Papillion. Excuse me. And guests will use my driveway and will be respectful of neighbors, and because we have a pleasant, quiet neighborhood.
Okay, tell us a little bit about Airbnb.
Okay, I did have a little presentation. I didn't know if you wanted all of that or not. But
Sure, give us the
Feel
presentation.
free.
I have been a resident of Papillion for 22 years. I moved here in 1992. And I just retired from teaching. I was at Papillion La Vista High School and have over 20 years of teaching in Papillion and other states. And as I was approaching retirement, I was trying to decide what I could do to be a productive, contributing member of my community. I didn't want to just stay at home. And I really considered several different types of food businesses because I was a foods teacher. I taught foods and nutrition and culinary arts at the high school. And the more I researched that, the more I thought that's going to be too much work to do a food business. So then my next thought was hospitality, and I started doing some research on bed and breakfasts, and there were several, in the tri-state area that might have been for sale, but I really didn't want to leave the Papillion area. So I thought, I wonder if there's another way to do that. And then I came across Airbnb, the company that I am registered with, and I thought that might be a good possibility. And then in March, prior to the Berkshire Hathaway shareholders convention, there were newspaper articles, and Warren Buffett was really encouraging members of our community to become hosts. And Airbnb is a company that's homeported or home stationed in San Francisco, California, and they set up a workshop in Omaha and invited people to come in, and that's when I got registered for Airbnb. They were created in 2007, so it's a fairly new company, but it's all internet-based. So I've logged on and I did my registration through the internet. And then as time went on, I did a little more research in the website, and they did state that any type of permits might be handled through individual communities. So I thought, well, I should, check into that. So I did investigate, and I talked with Mark Sturzma, with the planning director, and tried to find out if I was zoned correctly, and we were. And then we had the application process for the permit. So I did the application, and I did a title search, and the public hearing was last month for the Planning Commission, and that was approved. And then the City Council meeting is current right now. I also checked into insurance because I wanted to make sure I had the correct insurance for my home, and my insurance company would not cover a bed and breakfast business, so I researched and I found another company that would do that. So I have insurance for a bed and breakfast business. And Airbnb also does verification. I gave them all of my background information. They have my passport information and all of that. So they do an online and an offline match of your IDs to do a verified ID. And they do that in the process of guests who will use my Airbnb. And not all are verified, but they really encourage the host to be verified. And that means that, as a verified ID, when I have a possible guest, they won't know my address, they won't see my phone number or my email address until I confirm a reservation with them. So that's kept, pretty private. I've had some neighbors that were concerned about the traffic use in our neighborhood, and I don't think I'm going to increase traffic coming into my neighborhood. I've had I think probably about 15 guests in the last 2 months to my house. So that's probably, 2 a week or something like that is probably what it averages. And they will be parking in my driveway, not on the street. So I think that's pretty much what I was going to let you know.
Well, okay, I've got some questions for you. What kind of references or background checks are done on the people that are going to stay in your house?
I know that they have to get their, their credit card information. They have to get, driver's license and phone numbers. They have to get all of that. And I think they would be verified after they've been with the Airbnb for a short time. But once they've become a guest, I do an evaluation. I have a little list of things. I make comments on how, I would recommend them as a guest or if I would not recommend them. And I can tell Airbnb privately, so that it's not published, if there's something of a concern of a guest that they shouldn't be a guest. And Airbnb is pretty serious about removing them from their organization.
Well, do you have the ability to decline and tell somebody no?
Yes. So when a guest requests to stay at my house, I can email back and forth to them, have several conversations to find out a little background from where they're from, and several things is what I can do. Kind of get a feel for them before I make give the okay to have them.
Okay, you say you've had about 15 guests. Give us some examples. What kind of people? I mean, you're talking about something that seems odd, and I've found that from a lot of people, it's odd. What kind of people are staying in your house or have stayed in your house as a guest through this Airbnb?
Well, they're normal people, and they've come from as far away as Italy. I had guests from Italy about 2 weeks ago, and New Jersey, and California, and Colorado, and Minnesota, and typically they're on their way on vacation to some other location. Sometimes they've come here, but most of my guests are on their way to another location, and Omaha is a great stopping place for an overnight stop. But I've also had guests come to Papillion for specific activities, weddings or graduations or events like that they wanted to be here for several days.
Why did they stay in your house rather than just go to a hotel? We've got a great hotel being built on the south end of town. Why did they stay in your house?
I think they're just looking for something different than a hotel. I've had several people say, this is so much better than a hotel because it's cozy and it's, we get to visit with you and have a wonderful meal. So,
what kind of control do you have over their activity? See, I'm thinking of the college kids here for College World Series who are going to party all night.
Well, they're not going to do that in my house, so...
First off, you could decline them.
I can, and I do have, restrictions of how they should act in my house, and being respectful of a good night's sleep is part of that.
Well, are you there all the time?
I am there when I have a guest, yes. I don't leave my house empty, right.
Okay, well, what brought you to come in and get a permit? This is the first such permit we've ever had. Why are you here?
Why did I come to get a permit? Well, as I was researching through Airbnb and all of the things that they had mentioned, they said it was up to each community. So as a citizen of the community, I felt I should do the right thing and find out what that is. So I'd started the process.
Okay, now, this permit, as I understand it, would be limited to you, so nobody else could use it, right?
Right.
Would you have a problem if it was limited in time? For example, you had to come back next year and convince us this is okay?
I would prefer not to renew it every year, and I can see that I probably will, I really enjoy doing this bed and breakfast. I've made lots of new acquaintances and hopefully new friends, and after, a full life of military and then a full life of teaching, I don't foresee doing this more than 7 to 10 years at the most, maybe 5 to 7 years.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Florence.
Well, you seem to have the right personality for this, I'll tell you that. But so a quick look at Airbnb on the internet shows that they have a category called safety, and what do I do to make my guests safe. And so it has a number of things here. It talks about supplies, fire prevention, exits, hazards, all this sort of stuff. What do they do to make sure you've done any of those things?
They have a place for me to check off things that I have for that. So I have the smoke and carbon monoxide detectors currently. And I was reading more about that yesterday just to find out too, and they are offering a free carbon monoxide and smoke detector to their hosts. So I applied for one of those too. They're going to be mailing me one in about 4 to 6 weeks. But it's just up to each host to, to verify that. But they do want our homes to be safe. So I think they're having a few more restrictions. And if you don't meet some of their restrictions by January of 2015, they would probably remove me as a host too.
Okay, so today it's self-reported.
Right.
Okay, so then as you go through, that's why I see they recommend you go to your city and find out what all their compliance issues are, and that's what brings you here tonight. Okay. All right, no further questions.
Any other questions?
I won't have any questions, but I'll jump in. I happened to, a few weeks ago, see the founder of Airbnb on TV, and he was explaining, and I'll just tell you how you got that strange name, Airbnb. he was explaining that the name comes from when he and a friend in San Francisco, there was some event going on and the hotel rooms were tight. So they decided that, well, they would use their spare room to make a few bucks. But they didn't have any beds. All they had was air mattresses. So they blew up air mattresses and put them in this room, and they looked at it and said, well, we're not really a bed and breakfast. We're an air bed and breakfast. And I thought, well, yeah, that's kind of the idea that you're not the traditional full, historic house bed and breakfast. You're a stopover type place. Is that the way
And
you're going to be?
there are lots of different accommodations. If you look on Airbnb, you can have, really nice, huge homes that you could have the whole home too. I think you could rent that, or very small. I've seen a futon mattress or a futon bed in some homes is all they offer. So there's a wide range, and guests that are looking to stay, they're looking at the price and they're looking what's available and if they like what it looks like. So, and the price I think has probably been the big driver on mine. And I know I'm on the low end of it. I'm asking $50 a night for the first person and then additional $10 for each additional guest. So, and I negotiate that. If I have a larger family and there's other circumstances, I negotiate that with them too. But I did notice that the other Airbnb hosts in Papillion, some of them are much higher than I'm charging. So
I also noted that you're not the only one in Papillion.
that's it, yes.
Airbnb, their website lists 4 houses in Papillion.
In Papillion, yes.
2 of which I think I've already identified as where they're at.
They do show a map. They don't show our address anymore. I think they used to at the, when I first logged on, but they've taken that off. But they're all south of 370 is the other homes.
And they're just houses in their neighborhood like yours.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get Mr. Stursma or whoever needs to confirm this really is the first person to ask for a permit for bed and breakfast, isn't it?
We looked at our records, and in 1986, there was a special use permit issued for a bed and breakfast in Papillion. At that time, we didn't have a definition for bed and breakfast. Mike Scherber, our city attorney at the time, recommended that we use that process, lacking any clear definition on how to handle it. In 1995, the city adopted the definition of bed and breakfast in its zoning ordinance, and that definition hasn't changed since then. But this is the first application that we've received for bed and breakfast since that 1986 application.
I'm assuming the other 3 being good citizens of Papillion will see this in the news or on TV and come running in for their permit. So, number one, I commend you for coming in and asking, because apparently everybody doesn't think the same way.
I was a little discouraged because I did contact a company today about the one of the requirements that the Planning Commission has for an automatic sprinkler system, and it might be cost prohibitive for me to do that. So I don't know if I can continue this, but it's probably, I have to change the pipe that comes into my house to a 2 to 4 inch water line, and a plumber would have to do that, and then he talked like it would be about $12,000 to install a water sprinkler system in my house.
Just a quick comment on that. As you get into that, and if you have questions, be sure to work with our building department, because they understand the fire regulations really well. So I want to make sure you're not overbuilding and over-engineering, and if there's something more appropriate. But I think it's also important to know most of those fire regulations actually come from the state. So it's not the city or the planning commission that's putting those requirements on you. Those are state-level requirements. So anybody doing bed and breakfast in Nebraska should be following those same regulations. But use our building department as a point of resource. Any other council discussion? No discussion.
I would like make a motion to amend Resolution R14, stipulating that we approve this application for 1 year.
Have a motion to amend for 1 year. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second. Any council discussion on that? Please vote. This is just on the amendment.
So could I have clarification on that? Does
Yeah.
that mean I would need to come back in a year?
Based on that amendment, yes.
5 yeas, 2 nays. Nays by council members Jaworski and Klug.
Motion does pass, so now vote on the motion as amended. Oh, I'm
Okay.
sorry, Mr. Mumgard.
Do you need a motion to approve on that? All right,
That was
okay.
the motion to amend.
Well,
So
can
now
I-
we'll vote on the motion as amended.
Can I say something real quick before we vote on this next one? I'm sorry, but I just feel to me, that's unfair making her come back in a year when we got 2 or 3 of them in Papillion right now that didn't even come up here for a permit. At least she's being honest. I just think that's unfair that we're asking her to come back in a year.
Thank you. Mr.
I'll
Mumgard.
just comment before my vote. Mr. Jaworski, I'll answer your concern. I think you got a point there. I voted for it simply because I think it's probably meaningless, that I don't expect problems to arise. But another application in a year doesn't seem to be too terrible, that if that makes people more comfortable in getting on with it, fine. And I would certainly anticipate that we will see at least 3 more of these in the near future because they're easily identifiable. And I'm sure our staff will be doing what's necessary to see that the other Airbnb people are following the same line. And I'm thinking that, well, okay, we'll play with it case by case, and if we find that we are more comfortable as we move along, we can remove the 1-year restriction, something like that. That's why I voted for it. And I'm going to vote for the permit too. But I want to start with a disclaimer, so bear with me. Oftentimes you might hear people say that we shouldn't be influenced by who's asking, because that implies special treatment. Well, I'm going to stand here and tell you I am influenced by who's asking. But it's not that I'm going to give her any special treatment. It's because I've known Carol Fairfax for 22 years. She lives across the street from me and a couple houses down. Our sons grew up together. My son would have preferred to be at her house rather than my house many, many times. Yes. I've cared for her house when she's gone, and she's cared for my house. That's the level of knowledge I have about Carol Fairfax. And so I'll start by admitting I am influenced by who's asking. But I'm not going to give her special treatment. I'm going to tell you what that influence means to me. Clear back last spring, as she indicated, she retired, and she shared with me her plans to get into this Airbnb Airbnb process. And frankly, I had questions. We stood in her driveway and talked for quite a long time. I made some suggestions, she took them. And over the next couple months, 2-3 months, this has been a matter of some discussion among all of the people who live immediately near Carol. She has been to talk to them, as you see by the support that she got. She reached out to them. Carol's been very active in our neighborhood. She shows up at the neighborhood parties. She's well known to the people on the street. And I have found that that means something to people. I've talked to almost all of the people who live immediately around her. And I find that to a person, they either support her or say acceptance. Say, yeah, it's no big deal, I'll accept it. You can see by the Planning Commission minutes that one neighbor across the street from her went to the commission and spoke in favor. I know at least 2 other immediate neighbors were there, and they walked away satisfied. I know there are 2 Planning Commission members who live in my neighborhood. One of them lives behind you and up a couple houses, close enough that if those college kids had a party, he would know about it. And they both voted in favor of Carol Fairfax. The comment I heard from Carol, as she's indicated, is an accomplished chef. and her reputation precedes her in the neighborhood, and several neighbors have said, well, they don't need the bed, but they'd sure as heck like to come over for breakfast. And so that's kind of the reputation that Carol Fairfax has in my neighborhood. I will tell you that after the Times wrote a story about this a week ago, I got calls from other people who live further away and weren't aware of what was going on. And they had concerns, and we've discussed them. They're legitimate concerns that I'm not ignoring. Stuff like traffic and opening the door for other activity that we won't be in favor of. But what it really comes down to, Carol, it's I'm voting based on who's asking, because it's a matter of trust. And I have found that I have heard from your immediate neighbors that they trust you, and I trust you too. That I can't believe, and they can't believe, that Carol Fairfax is going to do anything or allow anything to happen in her house that harms her neighbors. Now, I hope we can say that down the road about the other people who might come in and ask for a permit. But I think she's shown that she's a responsible person that deserves to have a chance at give this a shot. And certainly over the next year, we'll find out if that shot is a bad idea or a good idea. I will tell you I have some disagreement with the requirement of the fire sprinkler. We've discussed that at length, and yeah, that sounds to me to be a hurdle that effectively shuts it down, that we can't issue permits for bed and breakfasts in Papillion if that's a requirement. Nobody's going to invest that kind of money in their house for a fire sprinkler system. And then secondly, the limitation that's in our code of a 7-day stay, well, that seems, I don't know what that basis for that is, why that is, but it's in our code. And both of those are in our code, so I'll say that tonight's not the time to discuss whether we should have them or not, that we're going to have to go through a code amendment, but I'm likely going to explore that and possibly request a code amendment, because I see by their Airbnb website that they claim to have 170 hosts in the Omaha area. And I go to work every day with the city of Omaha government, and I've never heard of anybody applying for a permit in Omaha for a bed and breakfast under Airbnb. And I went looking, and I couldn't find in their zoning code or in the zoning code of Lincoln any such requirement that you have this fire sprinkler or anything like that. So I sit and wonder, why do we have this major barrier that doesn't seem to be, I look at it and thinking, I don't think anybody's even applying for permits anyplace else around. So you're one of the few ones that have ever applied. So I'll explore that later. That can come down the road. We should grant the permit and then discuss whether that's really a requirement that we need to have. So I'm going to vote in favor of giving Carol Fairfax a chance to succeed, and I encourage you all to do the same.
Mr. Gaines.
Let me just clarify. My issue is that I have trouble approving a permit for a different period of time for different applicants. So I feel that a year is a good amount of time for us to observe the process. And after the first year, I would be in favor of removing the restriction and just granting you a permit. So I just wanted to clarify why I offered that amendment. So,
Mr. Florence.
So, I feel that I can vote for this. I appreciate the fact that you came forward and you want to do the right thing. I think that's good. As a business model, though, I see this as being extremely risky for you. I look at this and it's the same issue people have. You have bed and breakfasts that are not registered. So, therefore, fire's not going in there, health's not going in there, all sorts of things. They don't know if they have insurance coverage, right? And it becomes a huge issue. Maybe nothing ever happens and everything's good, but now you have unregulated overnight stays all over. 136 in Omaha. It's the same reason some of the taxi services that have cropped up, they have reasons to not be for those things. So I'm going to vote for it, but I see it as a risky business model. Just, you didn't ask, but I'm sharing.
Any other council discussion? Just going to make one other comment, and I usually don't do this, and I don't know if it'll end up in an amendment or just a comment in staff reports. Since we're putting in the 1-year restriction because of council's comfort level and not anything specifically in ordinance or what Ms. Fairfax is asking for, I think there should be consideration in maybe waiving the fees related to that second application a year from now. So I don't know if that's a comment or an amendment, but it's a comment.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to amend the fees. Second permit?
To waive it.
To waive it, yes.
Is there a second? Second by Councilwoman Kluge. Please vote.
If it'll let me vote.
Mr. Jaworski. Mr. Glover.
7 yeas, 0 nays.
So now we can, any other council discussion on the motion as amended and amended again? Please vote.
7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is item F3, Resolution R140128, a public hearing and a vote. A resolution to approve a catering liquor license application for Twisted Vine LLC, doing business as Twisted Vine, 123 North Washington Street, Papillion. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Do we have proponents? Do we have any opponents? Close the public hearing. Do you have a motion to approve Resolution R140128? Motion by Councilman Gaines, second by Councilman Glover. Any council discussion? Please vote.
Seven yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Next is committee reports, and I don't think any have met in the last 2 weeks. Do we have any comments from the floor? See no comments from the floor. Do we have any council comments? Some updates from the last couple of weeks. Mr. Hoynes, Mr. Sturzman, and I met with John Winkler of the NRD to talk about some future land use, specifically the land west of the new dam site between the dam site and 132nd. What we envision there, that's under the NRD's control right now, but I think they want to meet, if they sell it, they want to meet what our desires are. So we talked about future land use there. Also attended a Greater Omaha Economic Development Partnership. They had a rebranding meeting for their regional campaign for the next 5 years. You might have seen that on the TV and in the newspaper, their campaign of We Don't Coast. So we're learning more about that and how individual communities play into that. Thank you everybody for the attendance at the groundbreaking for the Public Works facility. That's a major milestone, so thank you for that. Was also went and spoke to the Omaha Executive Group, gave them an update of what's going on in Papillion. That is a group of business owners. A lot of them are doing site selection and look for places to expand, so gave them an update on what's going on around here. And then Mr. Hoynes and I attended the Sarpy Chamber Economic Outlook this morning and got an update. I believe that's most of the updates. We do have a closed session tonight, so I'll ask for a motion. Is there a motion to go into a closed session to protect the public interest, to discuss negotiations pertaining to PCEA and IAFF union contracts? Motion by Councilman Ingberg, second by Councilman Glover. Do you have any proponents? Do you have any opponents? Any council discussion? Please vote.
7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. I'll restate for the record, the purpose of the closed session is only to discuss negotiations pertaining to PCEA and IAFF union contracts. The closed session will include the mayor, the city council, city administrator, assistant city administrator, the city attorney, the city clerk, the fire chief, and the staff attorney. Oh yeah, before we do that, we got a Boy Scout with us. You want to come up and introduce yourself? What troop you're from and...
I am Mark Kavanaugh from Troop 359 in Papillion.
Where's 359 at?
St. Clumkill.
Working on a badge requirement or just coming to hang out with us?
On citizenship in the community.
Great. If you need to visit with any of us for any badge requirements afterwards, feel free to hang around and some of us will visit with you if you want that. So thanks for doing that.
Thank you.